The Zephyrian research vessel Astral Harmony drifted silently through the void, its crystalline hull reflecting the distant stars like a prism. Commander Veltar S. Four Eyes tracked the readings on his bioscanner with growing unease. The creature they had captured from the Death World, called Earth, was becoming increasingly aggressive, and the situation was spiraling beyond their control 3 cycles ago. The Galactic Federation had commissioned them to study Earth's apex predators. The mission seemed straightforward: capture a few specimens, analyze their hunting patterns, and determine if they posed any threat to galactic civilization. What they found exceeded their worst fears. The creature they designated as Specimen Alpha was unlike anything in their databases. Standing nearly 2 meters at the shoulder when on its hind legs, covered in thick gray fur with eyes that seemed to hold an alien intelligence. The humans called it a Volf, but this name did nothing to capture the raw predatory power that radiated from every fiber of its being. Dr. Kexira, the expedition's lead xenobiologist, approached Veltar with trembling tentacles. Her usually pristine white exoskeleton showed stress fractures along the edges. "Commander, we've lost another research assistant. The creature somehow breached the energy barriers during feeding time." Jenko didn't stand a chance. Veltar's stomach churned as he reviewed the security footage. The Volf moved with a fluid grace that defied its massive size, calculating each step with the precision of a seasoned hunter. What disturbed him most were the 3 smaller forms huddled in the corner of the containment cell, the Volf's offspring, or cubs as the human terminology indicated. The cubs were barely half the size of their mother, yet their eyes held the same fierce intelligence. During the past week, the research team had observed them learning, adapting, and coordinating their movements in ways that suggested pack intelligence far beyond simple animal instinct. They communicated through subtle body language and low-frequency sounds that their translation equipment couldn't decipher. The cubs are exhibiting problem-solving capabilities that rival some of our junior officers, Kexira reported, her voice barely above a whisper. Yesterday, they managed to disable 3 security sensors using nothing but coordinated positioning and timing. It's as if they're studying us while we study them. The ship's artificial intelligence chimed in with its daily threat assessment. "Commander, based on current behavioral patterns, there is a 94.7% probability that Specimen Alpha will achieve full containment breach within the next 2 cycles. Additionally, stress indicators suggest the cubs are entering a developmental phase that may significantly increase their aggression levels." Veltar made his decision with the cold calculation that had earned him command of this vessel. "Prepare the emergency pods. We're jettisoning them into space before they become an even greater threat." The crew worked with desperate efficiency, their movements quick and purposeful. The Volf seemed to sense something was wrong, pacing restlessly in its cell while the cubs pressed close against the walls, their small forms trembling with what the thermal sensors registered as either fear or rage. As the containment cell was loaded into the ejection pod, Veltar couldn't shake the feeling that he was making a terrible mistake. The way the mother Volf looked at him through the transparent barriers felt too knowing, too aware. But the safety of his crew had to come first. The ejection sequence initiated with a series of mechanical clicks and hums. Within minutes, the pod containing the Volf family was floating in the empty void between star systems, far from any inhabited worlds. The ship's scanners showed no immediate signs of life-supporting planets within 100 light-years. "Emergency beacon activated," reported the navigation officer. "Any passing vessels will be warned to maintain safe distance from the pod." Veltar watched the pod disappear into the star-filled darkness, a tiny speck of metal-carrying creatures that had haunted his dreams for weeks. He told himself he had made the only logical choice, but deep in his core, he wondered if the galaxy had just made a powerful enemy. The Astral Harmony engaged its faster-than-light drives, leaving behind the floating tomb and its precious cargo. In the research logs, the mission would be marked as a complete failure. The specimens listed as terminated during containment breach, but Veltar knew the truth would follow him for the rest of his days. Behind them, The emergency pod drifted silently through space, its automated systems maintaining minimal life support while its occupants waited in the darkness. The Wolf's eyes never closed, always watching, always calculating. The cubs nestled against their mother's warmth, learning patience in the way that only true predators could. In the vast emptiness of space, time moved differently. The pod's beacon flashed its warning signal into the void, a tiny pulse of light in an ocean of stars. But space was not as empty as the Zephyrians believed, and sometimes the most unexpected saviors came from the most unlikely places. The pod continued its lonely journey, carrying within it a family whose story was far from over. In the darkness, the Wolf's breath created small clouds of vapor that quickly froze and disappeared, but her determination remained as strong as the day she was first captured. The cubs were growing stronger, adapting to their confined space with the resilience that was bred into their very bones. Unknown to the retreating research vessel, their abandoned cargo had already been detected by another ship, one whose crew would soon face a decision that would change everything they thought they knew about mercy, courage, and the true meaning of humanity. Captain Sarah Chun of the cargo hauler New Horizon was having the worst month of her career. The hyperspace engine had been making concerning noises for 3 weeks. Their food synthesizers were producing something that barely qualified as edible, and now her navigation officer was reporting an unscheduled object in their flight path. "It's some kind of emergency pod," Lieutenant Martinez called out from his station. "Zephyrian design by the looks of it, broadcasting a standard warning beacon about dangerous cargo." Sarah rubbed her tired eyes and checked their position on the star charts. They were in the middle of nowhere, at least 50 light-years from the nearest inhabited system. "Dangerous cargo, huh? What's the Federation protocol?" "Standard procedure is to maintain minimum safe distance and report the coordinates to the nearest patrol vessel." Her engineer, Chief Petty Officer Jackson, replied from the engine bay through the CUM system. "Could be anything from unstable exotic matter to biological specimens." The New Horizon was a small ship with a crew of only 8 humans. Designed for long-haul cargo runs between the outer colonies and the core worlds. They weren't equipped for rescue operations, and they certainly weren't equipped to handle whatever the Zephyrians had considered too dangerous to keep aboard their research vessel. "Captain," Martinez's voice carried a strange note of concern, "I'm picking up life signs from the pod. Multiple organisms, definitely mammalian by the biosignatures. They're alive, but life support is running critically low." Sarah felt her stomach drop. The Federation had strict rules about abandoned biological specimens, especially those marked as dangerous. But those same rules said nothing about letting sentient beings die in the void of space. "How long do they have?" "Maybe 6 hours before the atmospheric processors shut down completely. Whatever's in there will suffocate long before we could get a patrol ship out here." The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Sarah stared at the data readouts, her mind racing through the possibilities. The Zephyrians were known for their caution. If they had jettisoned something into space, it was probably because they genuinely feared for their lives. "Captain," came a voice from behind her, Dr. Emily Vasquez. Their medical officer had been quietly listening to the conversation. "I've been studying the biosignatures. The readings are consistent with Terran mammals, specifically canine species. The larger organism appears to be protecting several smaller ones." Sarah's heart clenched. "You're saying it's a family?" "That would be my assessment. The protective behavior patterns are clearly visible in the thermal imaging. Whatever these creatures are, they're taking care of their young." The moral weight of the situation pressed down on Sarah's shoulders like a physical force. She thought about the regulations, the safety protocols, and the very real possibility that bringing unknown predators aboard could doom her entire crew. But she also thought about her own family back on Earth, about the bond between parent and child that transcended species. Martinez scanned the pod's structural integrity. "Jackson, I want a full diagnostic on our cargo bay's containment systems. Dr. Vasquez, prepare the medical bay for unknown biological entities." "Captain," Martinez said carefully, "are you sure about this?" The warning beacon is pretty specific about maintaining distance. Sarah stood up from her captain's chair, her decision crystallizing into unshakable resolve. The Federation taught us that intelligent life is precious, regardless of its origin. If there's a family dying out there, we don't get to choose whether they're worth saving based on how dangerous someone else thinks they are. The next hour was a flurry of activity. As the crew prepared for the most unconventional rescue operation of their careers, Jackson rigged additional force fields in the cargo bay, creating multiple layers of containment that could be activated independently. Dr. Vasquez prepared sedatives and medical equipment suitable for unknown physiology. As they maneuvered closer to the pod, the external cameras gave them their first clear view of the occupants. Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. The creatures inside were magnificent, a large, gray-furred predator with intelligent eyes and 3 smaller versions huddled against her sides. "My God," whispered Martinez. "They're beautiful." The adult Volf, for Sarah was now certain that's what they were looking at, had positioned herself between her cubs and the approaching ship. Even in their desperate situation, she remained alert and protective, her head raised in a posture that spoke of dignity and fierce maternal love. "Life support is down to 30 minutes, Jackson reported. "If we're going to do this, we need to do it now." The docking procedure was tense and careful. The pod's automated systems were failing one by one, but the creatures inside remained calm, almost as if they understood that help was coming. When the final seal was made and the cargo bay pressurized, Sarah felt a moment of panic. What if the Zephyrians were right? What if she had just doomed her crew? The pod's door hissed open, and the Volf stepped out with careful, measured steps. She was larger than Sarah had expected, her presence commanding even in the sterile environment of the cargo bay. The cubs followed close behind, their eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez's voice was filled with wonder. "They're not showing any signs of aggression. The adult is clearly protective, but she's not threatening us. She's assessing us." Sarah watched through the monitors as the Volf family explored their new environment. The mother checked every corner, every potential hiding place, while the cubs stayed close but curious. There was intelligence in their movements, a thoughtful consideration that spoke of minds far more complex than simple animals. "Jackson, how are our containment systems holding up?" "All green, Captain. But honestly, I don't think we're going to need them. These creatures are showing more self-control than most of the diplomats we've transported." As if responding to some unheard signal, the Volf turned toward the main camera and looked directly at Sarah through the monitor. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, human and Volf regarded each other across the barriers of species and space. In that gaze, Sarah saw something that made her decision feel right for the first time since they'd spotted the pod. She saw gratitude, intelligence, and a fierce protective love that knew no boundaries. These weren't monsters to be feared. They were a family that had been saved from certain death by strangers, who chose compassion over caution. The New Horizon continued its journey through space, now carrying passengers who would change everything. The galaxy thought it knew about the creatures from the legendary death world called Earth. 3 days into their unexpected journey together, Sarah was beginning to understand why the Zephyrians had been so terrified. It wasn't because the wolves were mindlessly aggressive, it was because they were frighteningly intelligent. Dr. Vasquez had been spending hours observing the family through the cargo bay's monitoring systems. Her daily reports read like something out of a xenopsychology textbook. The wolves had figured out the ship's routine within 24 hours, had identified every crew member by their unique sense and walking patterns, and were now demonstrating problem-solving skills that rivaled some Federation Academy graduates. "Captain, you need to see this," Vasquez called from the observation deck overlooking the cargo bay. Sarah joined her at the reinforced windows, expecting to see the wolves resting or playing as they had been for most of the morning. Instead, she found herself watching the mother Volf carefully manipulating the cargo bay's basic control panel with her nose and paws. She wasn't randomly pressing buttons. Her movements were deliberate and methodical, testing each control to understand its function. How long has she been doing this? Sarah asked, fascinated and slightly concerned. About an hour. She's not trying to escape. The containment fields aren't even active right now. She's learning. Watch the cubs. Sarah shifted her attention to the three smaller wolves, who were positioned around the bay in what looked like strategic locations. As their mother worked with the controls, they were observing different aspects of the room, the air circulation vents, the lighting systems, the emergency equipment lockers. They're mapping our technology, Sarah realized with a mixture of awe and unease. They're learning how we build things, how our systems work. It gets more interesting. Yesterday, I dropped a medical scanner by accident. Before I could retrieve it, the adult female had examined it thoroughly and somehow activated its diagnostic mode. She then allowed it to scan all four of them as if she understood what it was for. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. These weren't just intelligent animals, they were beings capable of understanding and adapting to alien technology at a rate that defied explanation. No wonder the Zephyrians had panicked. Dr. Vasquez, in your professional opinion, what are we dealing with here? The medical officer was quiet for a long moment, choosing her words carefully. Captain, I've been studying xenobiology for 15 years. I've encountered dozens of intelligent species across the galaxy. These wolves, they're not just smart. They're displaying cognitive flexibility and adaptive learning that exceeds most Federation species. If they were humanoid, we'd be offering them membership in the Galactic Council. A soft chime from the intercom interrupted their conversation. Captain to the bridge, priority message incoming, came Martinez's voice. Sarah made her way to the bridge, where a holographic display showed the stern face of Admiral Morrison from Federation Command. His expression was grim, and his tone brooked no argument. Captain Ching, you are hereby ordered to alter course immediately for Starbase Eco 7. Our records show you retrieved a classified Zephyrian research pod containing dangerous biological specimens. You will transfer these specimens to Federation custody upon arrival. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. Admiral, with respect, these aren't specimens. They're intelligent beings who were abandoned to die in space. They've shown no aggression toward my crew. Captain, you don't understand the situation. The Zephyrian research team reported that these creatures killed 3 of their researchers before they were forced to jettison them. They are classified as extreme biological hazards. Your personal feelings are irrelevant. The connection ended before Sarah could respond, leaving the bridge in tense silence. She knew what would happen if she delivered the wolves to Federation custody. They would be studied, prodded, and probably dissected in the name of galactic security. The cubs would grow up in laboratories, never knowing freedom or family bonds. Captain, Martinez said quietly, our current heading would take us past the Kepler colony. It's an independent world, outside Federation jurisdiction. Sarah looked at her navigation officer with new respect. Kepler colony was known for its liberal policies toward non-Federation species and its protection of refugees from various galactic conflicts. How far out of our way would that detour take us? About 18 hours, and Captain, I've been monitoring the cargo bay feeds too. Those cubs play together just like my kids did when they were small. The mother watches them with the same expression my wife had when she was protecting our family. Chief Jackson's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, I hate to interrupt, but you should know that our passengers have been helping with the hyperspace engine repairs. What do you mean, helping? The Mother Volf has been watching me work for the past 2 days. This morning, when I was having trouble reaching a coupling behind the main manifold, she pointed to a panel I'd missed with her nose when I opened it. I found a loose connection that's been causing our efficiency problems for weeks. Sarah felt a warm feeling spreading through her chest. The wolves weren't just learning about their technology. They were contributing to the ship's welfare. They understood that they were part of a crew, and they wanted to help. Set course for Kepler colony, she announced. And Martinez, log it as a navigational error due to faulty sensors. We'll correct our heading once we've completed emergency repairs as the ship altered course. Sarah returned to the observation deck. The Volf family had settled into a comfortable group, the cubs playing while their mother kept watch. When the adult female saw Sarah at the window, she stood and approached. Placing one large paw against the transparent barrier, Sarah pressed her hand against the window, matching the Volf's gesture. For a moment, two mothers from different worlds shared a moment of understanding that transcended species, language, and the vast emptiness of space. In the cargo bay, the cubs looked up from their play and approached the window as well, their small paws joining their mothers against the barrier. Their eyes held no fear, only curiosity and what Sarah could only describe as gratitude. The new Horizon continued toward Kepler Colony, carrying precious cargo that would soon have the chance to choose their own destiny. Behind them, Federation patrol ships were already being dispatched to intercept them, but Sarah Chun had made her choice. Sometimes being human meant more than following orders. Sometimes it meant standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves, regardless of the consequences. As she looked at the Volf family, Sarah knew that whatever happened next, she would never regret the decision to choose compassion over fear. The stars ahead beckoned with the promise of freedom, and for the first time since this journey began, Sarah felt truly proud to be human. The Federation patrol ships found them 6 hours out from Kepler Colony. Captain Sarah Chun watched the tactical display as 3 heavily armed vessels dropped out of hyperspace directly in their path, their weapons already powered and targeting systems locked onto the New Horizon. "This is Admiral Torres aboard the FSS Retribution," came the harsh voice over the communication channel. "Captain Chun, you are in violation of direct orders and Federation biological safety protocols. Heave to immediately and prepare for boarding." Sarah looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Martinez, Jackson, Dr. Vasquez, each of them showing the same determined expression she felt in her own heart. They had talked about this possibility during the past day, and every single one of them had reached the same conclusion. "Admiral Torres, this is Captain Chun. I'm afraid I can't comply with that order. The beings aboard my ship are not specimens or biological hazards. They are intelligent creatures with the right to determine their own fate. Captain, you have 30 seconds to power down your engines, or we will disable them for you." Sarah switched to the ship's internal communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for emergency maneuvers. Dr. Vasquez, how are our passengers handling the situation?" The medical officer's voice came back steady and calm. "Captain, you're not going to believe this." The adult female positioned herself and her cubs in the safest part of the cargo bay without any instruction from us. "She seems to understand we're in danger, and she's protecting her family accordingly." The New Horizon was a cargo hauler, not a warship. Against 3 Federation patrol vessels, they had no chance in a direct confrontation. But Sarah hadn't survived 15 years of deep space cargo runs without learning a few tricks. "Martinez, plot a course directly through the Kepler asteroid field. Jackson, give me everything the engines have got. We're going to show these Federation hotshots what an independent cargo captain can do." The ship lurched forward as Jackson pushed the hyperspace engines beyond their recommended parameters. The patrol ships immediately gave chase, but they were heavier vessels designed for intimidation rather than speed. For a few precious minutes, the New Horizon pulled ahead. "Captain," Martinez called out, "the asteroid field is going to be tricky even for us. Those patrol ships won't be able to follow without risking serious damage. That's what I'm counting on. Take us in." The Kepler asteroid field was a maze of spinning rock and ice, the remnants of a planet that had been shattered in some ancient cosmic collision. Sarah had navigated it twice before during her cargo runs, but never at this speed and never while being pursued by hostile vessels. The New Horizon twisted and dove between massive chunks of stone, her hull groaning under the stress of the rapid maneuvers. Behind them, the Federation ships were forced to slow down, their larger size and heavier armor making them clumsy in the tight spaces between the asteroids. "We're losing them," Martinez reported with satisfaction. "Their sensors can't track us effectively through all this interference." But their celebration was short-lived. The lead Federation ship had positioned itself at the field's exit point, waiting for them to emerge. There was nowhere to run, and Kepler Colony was still 2 hours away even at maximum speed. "Captain," Doctor. Vasquez's voice came over the intercom with a note of amazement. I think our passengers want to help. What do you mean? The Mother Volf is at the cargo bay control panel again, but this time she's not just learning. She's actively trying to communicate something. I think she wants access to the ship's communication system. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying she wants to talk to the Federation ships? I can't be certain, but her behavior suggests she understands the nature of our conflict. She keeps pointing to the communication controls and then to herself and her cubs. The idea was insane, but Sarah had long since abandoned conventional thinking. Patch her through to the main communication system. Let's see what she has to say. The next few minutes were filled with technical adjustments as Jackson rigged a connection between the cargo bay and the ship's external communication array. When the system was ready, the Mother Volf approached the microphone with the same careful intelligence she had shown throughout their journey. What emerged from the speakers wasn't language in any conventional sense, but it was undeniably communication. Low, harmonic sounds that seemed to carry complex emotional information. The Volf's voice was deep and resonant, filled with what could only be described as dignity and authority. Captain Chun, Admiral Torres's voice crackled with confusion. What in the name of the Federation are you broadcasting? Before Sarah could answer, something extraordinary happened. The cubs joined their mother at the microphone, their higher-pitched voices creating a haunting harmony with their mother's deeper tones. The sound that filled the communication channels was unlike anything any of them had ever heard, a song that spoke of family, loss, gratitude, and hope. The bridge fell silent as the Volf song continued. Even through the distortion of the communication system, the emotional content was unmistakable. These beings were not monsters or specimens, they were people, in every sense that mattered, asking for the chance to live free. Admiral, Sarah said quietly into the stunned silence, are you really going to condemn a family to life in a laboratory after hearing that? There was a long pause before Torres responded. Captain Chen, those creatures, they're singing. Yes, Admiral, they're singing. And if you take them back to Federation custody, that song dies in a research facility somewhere. Is that the legacy we want for the Federation? The tactical display showed the patrol ships holding position but no longer actively pursuing. In the background, the Volf song continued, a sound so beautiful and haunting that it seemed to echo through the very fabric of space itself. Captain, came a new voice over the communication channel, this one belonging to a younger officer. This is Lieutenant Commander Harrison aboard the Vigilant. Sir, I have children of my own. I can't be part of breaking up a family like this. Lieutenant Commander Harrison, return to formation immediately, Torres snapped. With respect, Admiral, I'm requesting clarification on our rules of engagement regarding intelligent non-Federation citizens expressing their desire for freedom. Sarah smiled despite the tension. The Federation officers were human too, and humans had a long history of choosing conscience over orders when it really mattered. The Volf song reached a crescendo, and then faded to silence. In the quiet that followed, Sarah could hear the sound of her own heartbeat and the steady hum of the ship's engines. She waited, knowing that the next word spoken would determine the fate of 4 remarkable beings, who had already changed her understanding of what it meant to be alive in the universe. The communication channel crackled, and Admiral Torres's voice came through, heavy with the weight of a decision that would define his career. Captain Chun, you have 1 hour to reach Kepler Colony before we resume pursuit. After that, these orders come from too high up for me to ignore. It was more mercy than Sarah had dared to hope for. Thank you, Admiral. You won't regret this. The New Horizon emerged from the asteroid field and raced toward Kepler Colony, carrying its precious cargo toward freedom and a new life among the stars. Kepler Colony appeared on their screens like a beacon of hope against the star-filled void. The independent world was known throughout the galaxy as a haven for refugees, political dissidents, and anyone seeking freedom from the rigid bureaucracy of the Federation. Its orbital platforms glittered with the lights of 1,000 different species living in harmony. This is Kepler Colony Control, came a warm voice over the communication channel. Captain Chung, We've been monitoring your situation. You are cleared for emergency docking at Bay 7. We have representatives from the Interspecies Protection Council waiting to assist your passengers. Sarah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. The Interspecies Protection Council was renowned for their work with refugee populations, and their legal authority was respected even by the Federation. As the New Horizons settled into the docking bay, Sarah made her way to the cargo hold. She wanted to personally escort the Volf family to their new life, to see them take their first steps toward freedom. When she arrived, she found Dr. Vasquez already there, tears streaming down her face. "Captain, you have to see this," Vasquez whispered, pointing toward the observation window. Sarah looked down into the cargo bay and felt her breath catch in her throat. The mother Volf was standing at the bay doors, but she wasn't alone. Somehow, during the chaos of their escape and arrival, she had managed to fashion something extraordinary from scraps of fabric and metal she had found in the storage compartments. It was crude, but unmistakably intentional, a collar made from strips of emergency blanket material and spare wire. Not a symbol of captivity, but something else entirely. Attached to the collar was a small piece of metal that had been carefully scratched with what could only be considered writing. "She's trying to tell us something," Sarah realized. "Those marks, they're not random. There's a pattern to them." Dr. Vasquez was already running the symbols through the ship's translation matrix. "Captain, this is incredible. The pattern matches basic mathematical sequences, prime numbers, Fibonacci progression, geometric relationships. She's demonstrating intelligence using universal mathematical concepts." But even more remarkable was what happened next. Each of the cubs approached their mother, and she carefully placed similar collars around their necks. But these weren't identical, each one carried different symbols, unique identifiers that spoke of individual identity and family bonds. "They're naming themselves?" Sarah whispered in amazement. "They're creating their own identity markers for their new life." The bay doors opened with a gentle hiss of equalizing pressure, and the Volf family stepped onto Kepler Colony for the first time. Waiting for them was a delegation that included humans, Centaurians, Andromedans, and several other species. At their head stood Ambassador Maria Santos, the human representative to the Interspecies Protection Council. The mother Volf approached Ambassador Santos with the same careful dignity she had shown throughout their journey. When she reached the ambassador, she performed an action that left everyone present speechless. She lowered her head in what was unmistakably a formal bow of greeting. Ambassador Santos, to her credit, immediately returned the gesture. "Welcome to Kepler Colony," she said in a voice filled with genuine warmth. "We are honored to offer you sanctuary and citizenship if you choose to accept it." The cubs stayed close to their mother, but their eyes were bright with curiosity as they took in their surroundings. The docking bay was filled with beings from across the galaxy, and yet none of them showed fear or hostility toward the new arrivals. For the first time since their rescue, the Volf family was surrounded by acceptance rather than suspicion. Dr. Vasquez had prepared a detailed report on the family's behavior, intelligence, and remarkable adaptability. As she presented it to the council representatives, Sarah watched the wolves exploring their new environment with the same methodical intelligence they had shown aboard the ship. "Captain Chun," Ambassador Santos approached her with a smile. "The council has reviewed Dr. Vasquez's report. Based on the evidence of language development, mathematical comprehension, and social organization, we're prepared to grant full personhood status to this family. They'll have all the rights and protections afforded to any citizen of Kepler Colony." Sarah felt a surge of pride and relief. "What about the Federation? Will they try to reclaim them?" "The Federation recognizes our sovereignty in matters of refugee protection. As long as these individuals choose to remain here, they're under our protection. Of course, they're also free to leave if they ever wish to do so." As the formal ceremonies concluded, Sarah found herself alone with the Volf family one last time. The mother approached her and performed that same graceful bow she had given the ambassador. But then she did something more. She gently placed her paw on Sarah's hand and made a soft sound that needed no translation. "You're welcome," Sarah replied, her voice thick with emotion. "Take care of your family. Live free." The cubs each approached in turn, touching Sarah's hand with their small paws in what was clearly a gesture of gratitude and farewell. Their eyes held intelligence, warmth, and something that looked remarkably like understanding. As Sarah prepared to return to her ship, she was surprised to find Ambassador Santos waiting for her. "Captain, there's something you should know. The story of what you did has already begun spreading throughout the galaxy. The Federation is facing serious questions about their handling of intelligent non-human species." "I just did what felt right," Sarah replied. "That's exactly why it matters so much. You've started something. Captain Chun, the galaxy is going to be asking some very important questions about how we treat beings who are different from us." Sarah returned to the New Horizon with her crew, but as they prepared to depart Kepler Colony, she couldn't help but look back at the orbital platform where 4 remarkable beings were beginning their new life. They had names now, citizenship, and most importantly, they had freedom. The Mother Volf had chosen the name Luna for herself, while the cubs had become Star, Nova, and Comet, names that spoke of their journey through the darkness of space toward the light of a new beginning. As the ship pulled away from the dock, Sarah received one final transmission from the colony. It was a video feed from the observation deck where Luna and her children were watching the New Horizon depart. Luna lifted her head toward the stars and sang once more, a song of gratitude that echoed across the communication channels. The sound followed them into hyperspace, a reminder that sometimes the most important thing a person could do was simply choose to care about someone else's suffering. In the vast darkness of space, that choice could light up the galaxy. 5 years later, the Galactic Federation Council chambers buzzed with unprecedented activity. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered for what historians would later call the most important session in galactic history. At the center of it all stood Captain Sarah Chun, now Admiral Chun, and beside her, an extraordinary delegation from Kepler Colony. Luna stood with quiet dignity at the speaker's podium, her silver collar now bearing the official insignia of Kepler Colony's ambassador. Her children, now fully grown and accomplished in their own right, flanked her as cultural attaches and interpreters. Star had become a renowned engineer, Nova was studying xenobiology, and Comet had shown remarkable talent in interspecies diplomacy. The reason for this historic gathering was simple yet revolutionary. Luna's family had formally petitioned for Earth to be granted full protection status and recognition as a protected world under the Enhanced Sentient Rights Protocol, a law that had been passed directly as a result of their own case. "Honored representatives," Luna began, her words now flowing through a sophisticated translation device that had been specifically designed to convey the complex emotional content of her species' communication. "I stand before you today not as the specimen that was once abandoned in space, but as a citizen of the galaxy with a voice that demands to be heard." The translation carried not just her words, but the undertones of authority and intelligence that had first captivated Admiral Chun years ago. The chamber fell silent, every being present understanding they were witnessing history in the making. "My family and I are living proof that the galaxy's understanding of intelligence and personhood has been far too narrow. We are not the only species from Earth that possesses complex social structures, problem-solving abilities, and emotional depth. The world you call Terra is home to countless species that deserve protection from exploitation and abandonment." In the gallery reserved for humans, Admiral Chun watched with pride as Luna presented her case with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. The past 5 years had seen remarkable developments on Kepler Colony. Luna had not only learned to use technology, but had contributed to improving it. Her unique perspective on pack dynamics had revolutionized the colony's approach to community planning and resource distribution. Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian research vessel Astral Harmony sat in the section reserved for those who had requested to make formal statements. His 4 eyes were fixed on Luna with what could only be described as shame and wonder. When Luna finished her primary address, she did something that stunned the entire assembly. She formally invited him to speak. "Commander Veltar," she said, her translated voice carrying no trace of anger or resentment. "You were the first being from beyond Earth that I encountered. Your fear led to a decision that nearly cost my family our lives, but it also led to events that have brought us to this moment. Would you share your thoughts with this assembly?" Veltar rose on trembling legs, his usually pristine uniform showing signs of the stress he had carried for 5 years. "Ambassador Luna, honorable representatives, I stand before you as someone who made a terrible mistake based on fear and ignorance. When we encountered Luna and her family, we saw only predators to be contained and studied. We failed to see people with families, emotions, and intelligence that equaled or exceeded our own." His voice broke slightly as he continued. "The report I filed claimed that these beings were dangerous biological hazards. The truth is that they were dangerous to our preconceived notions about what constitutes personhood in this galaxy. They challenged everything we thought we knew about intelligence and civilization." The Zephyrian commander turned to face Luna directly. "Ambassador, I formally request your forgiveness for the injustice my crew and I inflicted upon your family, and I fully support Earth's protection under the Enhanced Sentient Rights Protocol." Luna's response demonstrated the remarkable growth she had achieved during her years on Kepler Colony. "Commander Veltar, fear is a natural response to the unknown, but you have shown the courage to acknowledge your mistake and learn from it. That courage is what will make the galaxy a better place for all sentient beings. You have my forgiveness and my gratitude for speaking truth today." The formal vote that followed was overwhelming. Earth was granted the highest level of protection available under galactic law, with specific provisions for the welfare and rights of all its sentient species. But more importantly, the Assembly passed Luna's amendment, a comprehensive expansion of rights for any being demonstrating intelligence. Regardless of their physical form or origin. As the session concluded, Admiral Chun found herself in the delegates' lounge, surrounded by Luna and her children. The conversation flowed easily now, with translation technology that had been refined specifically to handle the wolves' complex communication patterns. "Admiral," Luna said, "Star has been working on something she wanted to share with you." Star approached with the same confident intelligence her mother had always possessed. "Admiral Chun, I've been developing improvements to hyperspace engine efficiency based on pack hunting coordination principles. The mathematics of coordinated movement in three-dimensional space translate remarkably well to faster-than-light travel calculations." Admiral Chun examined the technical specifications Star had prepared, her eyebrows rising as she began to understand the implications. "This could revolutionize space travel. The efficiency improvements alone would cut travel time by 30%. We wanted to ensure that humans were the first to benefit from our research," Nova added. "Your species was the first to see us as people rather than specimens. It seems appropriate that you should be the first to benefit from our contributions to galactic civilization." As the celebration continued around them, Admiral Chen reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. A simple cargo run had become a rescue mission, which had become a legal case, which had ultimately transformed the very foundations of galactic law and society. The Federation had undergone massive reforms in the wake of Luna's case. New protocols for first contact emphasized communication and understanding over containment and study. Research involving potentially intelligent species now required consent and legal representation. The changes weren't perfect, but they were a start. Luna approached Admiral Chun as the evening wound down. "Admiral, there is something I must tell you. My children and I have decided to establish a new organization, the Interspecies Rescue Coalition. We want to help other abandoned and misunderstood beings find their way to freedom." Admiral Chun smiled. "That sounds exactly like something you would do. You know, the Federation has been looking for experienced advisors for their new first contact protocols. I think they could learn a lot from your perspective." "We would be honored to serve," Luna replied. But we will always remember that the most important lesson we learned came from a human captain who chose compassion over fear in the darkness of space. As the delegates began to disperse, returning to their homeworlds with news of the historic proceedings, Admiral Chen stood at the observation deck watching the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its ancient dance around the sun, its countless species living their lives unaware that they now enjoyed protection from across the galaxy. The wolves had kept their promise to change the galaxy's understanding of intelligence and personhood. But more than that, they had proven that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't technology or weapons or political authority. It was the simple choice to treat other beings with dignity and respect. In the years that followed, the Interspecies Rescue Coalition would save hundreds of abandoned and misunderstood species. Luna's children would go on to make groundbreaking contributions to science, diplomacy, and art. The Enhanced Sentient Rights Protocol would become the foundation for a more just and compassionate galactic civilization. But it all began with a human captain who looked at a family in distress and chose to help regardless of the consequences. In the end, that was what made humanity special in the galaxy, not their technology or their military might, but their capacity to care about the suffering of others. The stars continued their eternal dance, but now they shone a little brighter, illuminated by the light of beings who had learned that true strength came from protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. And in that light, the galaxy had found a better way forward.